The wrench slipped from David's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He cursed under his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Working in zero gravity was never easy, but today felt different. The air inside the salvage bay tasted stale, and the lights flickered every few minutes. Waypoint Station Osiris was falling apart, just like everything else out here on the edge of colonized space. David retrieved the wrench and went back to work on the cargo hauler's engine. This was his life now. Fix broken ships, collect payment, survive another day. 3 years ago, he had dreams of exploring unknown worlds. Now he just wanted to finish his shift without the station's artificial gravity failing again. His communicator buzzed. "David, we need you in Bay 7, said Patricia, the station supervisor. Her voice sounded tense. "I'm in the middle of something," David replied, tightening a bolt on the engine core. "Drop it. This one's priority. Unknown vessel just docked. No identification codes, no response to our hails. You're the only mechanic available." David sighed and grabbed his toolkit. Unknown vessels usually meant trouble. Pirates, smugglers, or worse. But orders were orders, and Patricia didn't sound like she wanted to argue. Bay 7 sat at the far end of the station where they kept the quarantine docks. David had only been there twice before, both times for ships carrying dangerous cargo. The corridor leading to the bay was empty. His footsteps echoed off the walls, and the emergency lighting cast strange shadows. The bay doors opened with a hiss. Inside, the ship waited. David stopped and stared. He had seen thousands of ships in his career. Human vessels, alien traders, colony transports, military cruisers. This was different. The hull looked organic, like it had been grown instead of built. Crystalline structures jutted out at odd angles, pulsing with faint blue light. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to breathe. "What the hell is this?" David whispered. His scanner showed nothing useful. The ship's material didn't match anything in the galactic database. The energy signature was unstable, fluctuating between active and dormant. Whatever this thing was, it was dying. David approached slowly. The airlock stood open, which was a bad sign. Either someone left in a hurry, or the ship's systems had failed. He climbed inside, his boots making soft thuds against the floor. The interior was even stranger than the outside. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch. Veins of light ran through them like blood vessels. The air smelled like ozone and something else, something he couldn't identify. He moved deeper into the ship. His flashlight beam revealed corridors that curved in impossible ways. The architecture made no sense. Rooms connected at angles that shouldn't exist. David's sense of direction, usually reliable, failed him completely. He felt like he was walking through a living creature's body. Then he found the door. It was circular, made of the same crystalline material as the hull. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly. David reached out to touch them, not sure why. The moment his fingers made contact, the door reacted. The symbols flared bright, and the door dissolved into particles of light. Beyond it lay a chamber unlike anything David had ever seen. The walls were covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with dying light. In the center of the room, suspended in a failing energy field, was a creature. David stepped closer. The creature was small, maybe the size of a large dog. It had scales that shimmered between blue and silver, 4 legs ending in claws, wings folded against its back, a long tail with spikes along the ridge, and a face that looked almost intelligent, almost aware even in unconsciousness. A dragon. David had seen pictures in old Earth mythology books. But this was real, and it was dying. The energy field flickered. The creature's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. David's medical scanner showed vital signs failing across the board. Whatever this thing was, it needed help immediately. He reached for his toolkit, trying to figure out how to stabilize the field. His hands moved on instinct, connecting wires, rerouting power from the ship's dying core. The field strengthened slightly. The creature's breathing steadied. "Step away from my son." David froze. The voice came from behind him, deep and commanding. He turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, tall and imposing. Her body was humanoid, but covered in scales that matched the creature in the field. Massive wings folded against her back. Too large for the corridor, but somehow fitting anyway. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, and when she looked at David, he felt like she could see straight through him. "I said step away," she repeated. This time it wasn't a request. David raised his hands and backed away from the field. His mind raced. He knew what she was. Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories. The Draconidi, the dragon people. the species that went extinct 50 years ago in a plague that swept through their civilization. But she was here, alive, and very, very angry. "I was just trying to help," David managed to say. His voice sounded small in the large chamber. "Help?" The dragon woman moved closer. Even wounded and exhausted, she radiated power. "Your kind has helped enough. You've helped my species into extinction. You've helped yourselves to our technology. You've helped destroy everything we ever built." "I don't understand," David said. "I'm just a mechanic. I found your ship and my ship found you," she interrupted. "Do you think it's a coincidence that we docked at this station? That you were assigned to board us? I've been tracking you for 3 months, David Chen. You're the only human who might be able to save my son." David's blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" "I know everything about you," she said. "I know you've worked with salvaged draconidite technology your entire career. I know your body carries traces of our biosignatures. I know you're the only chance Ember has to survive." She gestured to the creature in the field. "My son, born during our escape. The ship is dying, and without the bond, he'll die too. You're going to help me save him." "I don't know how," David said honestly. "You will learn," the dragon woman replied, "or we'll all die together in the attempt. My name is Raina, and whether you like it or not, David Chen, your life just became connected to ours." The ship shuddered. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Raina's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "They've found us," she hissed. "We're out of time." Raina moved to the chamber's control panel with fluid grace despite her obvious exhaustion. Her clawed fingers danced across the crystalline interface, and the ship responded to her touch. The walls brightened slightly, and the energy field around Ember stabilized. David watched, fascinated by the connection between pilot and vessel. It was like watching someone communicate with their own body. "The station's security won't reach us for another 10 minutes, Raina said without looking at him. "That gives us time to talk. You need to understand what's really happening here." "You said I could save your son," David replied. "But I don't know anything about your biology or your technology. How am I supposed to help?" Raina turned to face him. Her golden eyes softened slightly, and David saw the exhaustion behind them. This wasn't just anger. It was desperation. "Sit down," she said. "This will be difficult to hear." David found a seat on what looked like a bench growing from the wall. Raina remained standing, her wings rustling slightly as she gathered her thoughts. "50 years ago, my people numbered in the millions," she began. "We lived on dozens of worlds, traveled freely through space, and were respected members of the galactic community. Then the plague came. It targeted our most sacred connection, the bond between Draconidae and our ships." "Your ships are alive?" David asked. "They're more than alive. They're part of us. When a Draconide is born, a ship is grown for them. The two bond on a genetic level. The ship becomes an extension of the pilot's body. The pilot becomes the heart of the ship. Without this bond, we can't survive in space. Our biology requires it." David looked at the small dragon in the energy field. "And your son?" "Ember was born during our escape," Raina said. Her voice cracked slightly. "This ship was grown for him, but the bonding process requires specific conditions we couldn't provide while fleeing. The ship has been dying since birth, and Ember is dying with it." "I'm sorry," David said, and he meant it. "But I still don't understand what I have to do with this." Raina's expression hardened again. "Tell me, David Chen, what do you know about how humanity acquired faster-than-light travel?" David frowned. "We developed it ourselves, took centuries of research and—" "You're repeating propaganda," Raina interrupted. "The truth is that humanity stole it. 50 years ago, human explorers found a damaged Draconide vessel at the edge of your solar system. Instead of trying to help, they took it apart. They studied our biotechnology and integrated it into their own ships. Every human vessel now uses modified Draconide systems." The words hit David like a physical blow. He thought about every ship he'd ever worked on, every engine he'd repaired, the organic components that nobody ever explained properly, the systems that seemed to respond to a pilot's intentions, the technology that worked but nobody fully understood. "That's impossible," David said weakly. "Is it?" Reyna asked. Have you ever wondered why human ships advanced so quickly? Why your species went from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in just 2 generations? You didn't invent anything. You stole it from us. David wanted to argue, but the pieces fit too well. The unexplained technology, the classified research, the way mechanics were trained to maintain systems without questioning their origin. But even if that's true, David said, how does that help your son? Because you've been exposed to our technology your entire career, Reyna explained. Every time you worked on a ship's biosystems, trace amounts of our genetic material entered your body. Over years of exposure, your DNA has been altered at a microscopic level. You're not fully human anymore, David Chen. You're partially compatible with Draconidy biotechnology. David stood up, his heart racing. That's not possible. I would know if something was changing me. Would you? Reyna moved closer. Have you noticed that you can work on systems other mechanics struggle with? That ships seem to respond better when you repair them? That you can sense what's wrong with an engine before running diagnostics? David's mind raced through memories, the times he'd fixed problems without understanding how, the way he seemed to know what a ship needed. He'd always thought it was talent or experience. Now Reyna was telling him it was something else entirely. You're lying, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have scans, Reyna said. She pulled up a holographic display showing DNA sequences. Your genetic code has been modified by exposure to our technology. It's subtle, barely detectable, but it's there. And it means you might be able to do something no human has ever done before. What? David asked. Reyna looked at Ember and her expression broke David's heart. It was the look of a mother watching her child die. You might be able to bond with his ship, she said quietly. If a bond forms, even a partial one, it could stabilize the vessel. Give Ember time to grow strong enough to complete the connection himself. You could save his life. And if it doesn't work? David asked. Then Ember dies, Reyna said simply. And I've wasted the last 3 months tracking you across the galaxy for nothing. David looked at the small dragon in the energy field. Ember looked peaceful in his unconsciousness, unaware that his life hung by a thread. Unaware that a human, a member of the species that destroyed his people, might be his only chance at survival. He is unaware of your existence, Reyna said, following David's gaze. In his dreams, he reaches out for the bond that should have formed at birth. He calls for the connection that will never come unless you help him. Why me? David asked. There must be other humans with the same exposure, other mechanics who've worked with this technology. I've tracked 17 candidates, Reyna admitted. You're the only one with the right genetic markers and the right level of exposure. The others were either too changed or not changed enough. You're the balance point between human and Draconidy biology. You're the only one who might survive the bonding process. Might? David caught the word. Reyna met his eyes. The bond is sacred to my people. It's never been attempted with another species. If it works, you'll be connected to Ember's ship for the rest of your life. Your nervous system will be permanently altered. You'll be able to feel the ship's pain and pleasure. You'll never be fully human again. And if it fails? David pressed. Then it will kill you, Reyna said bluntly. The ship will try to integrate with your nervous system, and your body will reject it. The feedback will destroy your brain. You'll die in agony while Ember watches through the ship's dying senses. David sat back down. His hands were shaking. This was insane. He was a mechanic, not a hero. He fixed engines and collected payment. He didn't save dying alien children by undergoing experimental biological procedures that might kill him. But he couldn't stop looking at Ember. The small dragon looked so peaceful, so innocent. He hadn't asked to be born during a genocide. He hadn't chosen to have his bonding interrupted. He was just a child who wanted to live. If I do this, David said slowly, and if it works, what happens after? Will your people accept a human bonding with one of your ships? Reyna's laugh was bitter. My people are almost extinct. There are 7 families left hiding in a dying star system. They'll accept anything that keeps us alive, even help from the species that destroyed us. I need time to think, David said. We don't have time, Reyna countered. She pulled up another display showing the station's security feeds. Armed personnel were assembling in the corridors. The Galactic Enforcement is coming. They'll destroy this ship and execute both of us. They declared the Draconidi extinct to hide the truth of what happened. If they find us alive, it exposes their cover-up. David stood up again. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. Humanity had stolen technology from a dying species. He'd been changed by that stolen technology. Now he had a choice. Let an innocent child die or risk everything to save him. What do I need to do? David asked. Reyna led David deeper into the ship's interior. The corridors seemed to shift around them, responding to her presence. The walls pulsed with faint light that grew stronger as they moved toward the center. David tried to memorize their path but quickly gave up. The ship's layout defied human logic. The bonding chamber is at the heart of the vessel, Reyna explained as they walked. Every Draconid ship has one. It's where the initial connection forms, where pilot and vessel become one. The process normally takes hours and happens naturally during infancy. We're going to try something that's never been attempted. How dangerous is this, really? David asked. His palms were sweating. I don't know, Reyna admitted. I've never seen a bonding fail because it's always done with newborns whose bodies are designed for it. Your human physiology might reject the connection immediately, or it might take hours to kill you. There's no way to predict. That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you, Reyna said. I'm trying to be honest. If you want to back out, this is your last chance. David thought about running. He could tell Patricia that the ship was too dangerous. Request a transfer to another station, disappear into human space. Nobody would blame him. But then he remembered Ember's small form suspended in the failing energy field, and he knew he couldn't live with that choice. I'm doing this, David said. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared high above them, covered in crystalline formations that resembled a starry sky. The floor was smooth and warm beneath David's boots. In the center of the room, a pillar of living crystal rose from the floor, pulsing with weak blue light. This was the ship's core, its heart. It's beautiful, David whispered. It's dying, Reyna corrected. Without Ember's bond, the ship is consuming itself trying to stay alive. Soon it will give up entirely. She led David to the crystal pillar. Up close, he could see patterns moving beneath the surface like thoughts trying to form. The ship was conscious in some way he didn't fully understand. It knew it was dying. It knew its bonded partner was dying. It was afraid. What do I do? David asked. Reyna placed her hand on the crystal. It brightened slightly at her touch. Place both hands on the core. The ship will sense your modified DNA and attempt to connect. If the bond can form, it will happen quickly. Your nervous system will integrate with the ship's consciousness. You'll feel everything the vessel feels. And if it can't form, then you'll die, Reyna said simply. I'll have just enough time to get Ember to stasis and try to find another candidate. But realistically, there won't be time. He'll die within days. David took a deep breath. His hands were shaking as he reached toward the crystal pillar. The surface felt warm and alive, vibrating with faint energy. He pressed both palms flat against it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then pain exploded through his body. It felt like fire in his veins, ice in his bones, electricity in his brain. David screamed but couldn't hear his own voice. The ship was pushing into his mind, trying to find compatible pathways in his nervous system. His human biology fought back instinctively, rejecting the alien presence. David saw flashes of memory that weren't his own. The ship's birth. Growing in a bio-nursery, waiting for its partner. The joy of first consciousness. The confusion when Ember couldn't complete the bond. The slow descent into despair as systems began to fail. Fight through it. Reyna's voice seemed to come from very far away. Your body will try to reject the connection. You have to accept it willingly. David tried to relax, but every instinct screamed at him to pull away. The pain intensified. He could feel his nervous system being rewritten. Pathways being created that shouldn't exist in human biology. It was agony. Then something shifted. The ship stopped pushing and started communicating. David suddenly understood what it was trying to tell him. It didn't want to hurt him. It was desperate and dying and reaching out for any connection that might save it. The ship was as scared as he was. David stopped fighting. He opened his mind to the connection, accepting the pain as the price of understanding. The ship flooded into his consciousness, and for a moment David thought he would drown in the alien presence. But then his human adaptability kicked in. His brain started finding ways to process the new information, creating structures that let him coexist with the ship's consciousness. The pain began to fade, replaced by something else. Awareness. David could feel the ship's hull as if it were his own skin. He could sense the dying engines like failing organs. He knew every corridor, every chamber, every system. The ship was part of him now, but something was wrong. The connection felt incomplete, unstable. David opened his eyes and saw Reyna staring at him in shock. It worked, she breathed. By all the stars, it actually worked. But it's different. This isn't a normal Draconidae bond. David stumbled away from the crystal pillar. His legs felt weak and the world spun around him. He could see through multiple perspectives at once. His own eyes, the ship's external sensors, Ember's fading vital signs in the medical chamber. It was overwhelming. The ship is stabilizing, Reyna said, checking her instruments. The core temperature is rising. Systems are coming back online. And Ember, his vital signs are strengthening. The partial bond is enough to keep the ship alive, and that's keeping him alive. David collapsed to his knees. The dual awareness was too much. He was himself and the ship at the same time. He could feel the vessel's gratitude washing through him like waves. How do you deal with this? David gasped. Feeling everything all at once? We're born to it, Reyna said. She knelt beside him. Our brains develop with the bond in place. Yours had to adapt in seconds. That you survived it all is remarkable. That you formed any connection is impossible. I feel different, David said. He looked at his hands. They looked the same, but he could sense something beneath the skin. Changed cells. Modified DNA. He was human, but not quite. You are different, Reyna confirmed. The bond changes everyone, but your human biology mutated the process. You're neither Draconidae nor human now. You're something new. Alarms suddenly blared through the ship. David felt them through his new connection as much as heard them. The station security had breached the bay doors. They're coming, Reyna said, standing quickly. We need to launch immediately. I can't fly this thing, David protested. I barely understand what's happening to me. The ship will help you, Reyna said. She moved to what David now recognized as a navigation console. Your bond gives you instinctive understanding of the vessel's systems. Trust that. Trust yourself. David stood on shaking legs. Through the ship's sensors, he could see armed security forces entering the bay. They were setting up heavy weapons, preparing to disable the vessel. He had minutes at most. Reyna, I've never flown anything before, David said. I'm a mechanic, not a pilot. Then it's time to learn, Reyna replied. She touched the navigation console and suddenly David understood. The controls weren't separate from him anymore. The ship was his body. Flying it was as natural as walking. He reached out with his new awareness and felt the ship respond. The engines, weak but recovering, began to power up. The landing clamps released. The vessel lifted smoothly off the bay floor. Security opened fire. Weapons fire splashed against the hull, and David felt each impact like bee stings. The ship's shields, nearly depleted, flickered to life. He poured power into them instinctively, prioritizing defense over speed. We need to break through the bay doors, Reyna said. David could see the doors through multiple sensors. They were reinforced, designed to contain explosions. Ramming them at low power would damage the ship. But he could feel the vessel's capabilities now, understood what it could do if he was willing to push it. He accelerated hard. The ship surged forward, and David felt the G-forces through his body and through the vessel's frame simultaneously. They hit the bay doors at full thrust. Metal screamed and gave way. The ship burst through into open space beyond the station. They're launching pursuit craft, Reyna warned. 4 interceptors. They'll try to disable our engines. David didn't need to think about his response. He felt the ship's desire to survive, merged with his own human determination. Together, they banked hard and dove beneath the station's bulk, using its mass to shield them from weapons fire. The interceptors followed, faster and more maneuverable. But David had something they didn't. He could feel the ship's every capability, knew its limits and potential intimately. He pushed the vessel in ways no programmed pilot would attempt. Tight spirals, sudden reversals, maneuvers that would kill a normal crew from the G-forces. One interceptor overshot and collided with another. The remaining 2 broke off, unable to match David's impossible flying. Head for the nebula, Reyna instructed. We can lose them in the interference. David felt the ship's agreement and changed course. Within minutes, they plunged into the purple gases of a nearby stellar nebula. The interceptor's sensors couldn't follow, and soon they were alone in the swirling clouds of gas and dust. David finally allowed himself to breathe. His body ached from the bonding, but he was alive. Ember was alive. They had escaped. "I did it," David said in wonder. "We did it," Reyna corrected. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You saved my son. No Draconide could have flown like that. Your human mind combined with the ship's instincts created something unprecedented." David felt Ember's presence through the ship's connection. The small dragon was sleeping peacefully now, his vital signs stable. He was unaware of everything that had just happened, unaware that a human had bonded with his ship to save his life. "What happens now?" David asked. Reyna's expression grew grim. "Now we run. The enforcement will label you a traitor. You can never return to human space. Your only option is to come with me to the hidden colony. Maybe there we can figure out what you've become and how to complete Ember's bond before yours becomes permanent." David looked at his hands again. They trembled slightly, but he could feel the ship's presence in his mind, steady and reassuring. He had made his choice. There was no going back. The nebula's purple gases swirled around the ship like a living thing. David could feel them through his bond, each particle registering as a faint touch against the hull. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. He sat in what Reyna called the pilot's chamber, though there were no traditional controls. The ship responded to his thoughts now, anticipating his intentions. "How long can we hide here?" David asked. The effort of maintaining the bond was exhausting. His head throbbed and his vision occasionally doubled as his brain tried to process input from both his eyes and the ship's sensors. "Not long enough," Reyna said. She was tending to Ember in the medical chamber, visible through a translucent wall. The small dragon was awake now, watching his mother with intelligent golden eyes. "The enforcement has access to deep space scanners. They'll sweep this entire sector within days. Then where do we go?" "To my people," Reyna said. She returned to the pilot's chamber and pulled up a star map. 3 weeks of travel to reach the hidden colony. But we'll need to avoid all inhabited systems. The moment we're spotted, every military force in the galaxy will come after us. David studied the map. The route Reyna plotted wound through empty space, avoiding trade routes and established territories. It would take them through regions marked as unexplored or dangerous. Perfect for hiding, terrible for survival if anything went wrong. 3 weeks, David repeated. "Can the ship last that long? Can I last that long?" "The bond is stabilizing," Reyna said. "I've been monitoring your neural activity. Your brain is adapting faster than I thought possible. It's creating new structures to handle the ship's input. Very human of you, actually. Your species has always been good at adapting." "Is that a compliment?" David asked, surprised. "An observation," Reyna corrected, but there was less hostility in her voice than before. "You saved my son. That means something, even if your species destroyed mine." Over the next few days, David learned to live with the bond. The constant awareness of the ship became more manageable as his brain learned to filter the information. He could focus on his human senses when needed, or shift his attention to the vessel's perspective. It was like having a second body, one made of metal and crystal and living energy. Reyna taught him the basics of Draconide ship handling. The vessels were designed to respond to emotional states as much as conscious thought. If the pilot was calm, the ship flew smoothly. If the pilot was agitated, the systems became erratic. David had to learn meditation techniques just to keep the engines stable. "Your kind flies with computers and cold logic," Reyna explained during one lesson. "We fly with feeling and intuition. The ship knows what you want before you think it. But that means you can't hide your emotions from it." David found this both fascinating and frustrating. He was used to machines that did exactly what he told them. This ship had opinions. When he was tired, it would gently suggest rest. When he pushed too hard, it would resist. The vessel was his partner, not his tool. Ember began to take notice of David. The small dragon would watch him through the translucent wall, tilting his head curiously. Through the ship's connection, David could feel Ember's confusion. The child sensed the bond but didn't understand it. In Ember's developing mind, David was part of the ship, a strange growth that hadn't been there before. "He's trying to understand you," Reyna said, watching her son. "In his mind, you're connected to his ship, but you're not him, and you're not Draconide. It confuses him." "Will that be a problem?" David asked. "I don't know. Raina admitted. Normally, the bond forms at birth. The ship and child grow together. Your presence might interfere with his natural development. The thought troubled David. He was trying to save Ember's life. But what if his presence damaged the child in ways they couldn't predict? The bond was supposed to be sacred, personal, intimate. David was an intruder in a relationship that should have belonged to Ember alone. On the 5th day of travel, they encountered their first real danger. David was resting when alarms jolted him awake. Through the ship's sensors, he detected 3 vessels closing on their position. They weren't enforcement craft. These were privateers, pirates operating in lawless space. "They've locked weapons on us," Raina said, rushing to the pilot's chamber. "They must think we're an easy target. Draconide's ships are valuable salvage, but can we outrun them?" David asked, already feeling the ship's engines warming up. "Not in open space," Raina said. "They're faster. We'll have to fight." David had never been in combat. The closest he'd come to violence was a bar fight 3 years ago that ended with a bloody nose. Now he was supposed to fight off 3 armed ships while bonded to a vessel he barely understood. "I don't know how to fight," David said. "Then learn quickly," Raina snapped. She pulled up weapons displays. "The ship has defensive systems. Focused energy beams, kinetic barriers, explosive charges. They're all connected to your bond. Think about defending yourself and the ship will respond." The pirate vessels opened fire. Energy bolts flashed across the void. David felt each impact through the bond like punches to his gut. The shields held, but barely. These weren't the small arms that station security had used. These were military-grade weapons designed to crack hulls and destroy engines. David's fear translated directly into the ship's response. Shields flared to maximum power. The vessel twisted in space, dodging incoming fire with movements David didn't consciously plan. His survival instinct and the ship's defensive programming merged into pure reactive motion. One pirate vessel closed to boarding range. David felt the ship's anger at the proximity, felt its desire to strike back. He gave in to that impulse and the vessel responded. Energy beams lanced out, precise and deadly. The pirates' shields collapsed and their hull ruptured. Atmosphere vented into space. "Good," Raina said. 2 more, focus." David tried to copy his first success, but the remaining pirates had learned. They split up, attacking from different angles. David couldn't track them both simultaneously. When he focused on one, the other scored hits on the hull. He felt each breach like a knife wound. "You're thinking like a human," Raina said. "Stop trying to track them individually. Feel them through the ship. Let the vessel handle the targeting." David closed his eyes and expanded his awareness. Through the ship's sensors, he perceived both pirates at once, not as visual targets, but as threats in space. The ship knew where they were, knew their trajectories, knew when they would fire. David just had to trust that knowledge. He let go of conscious control. The ship moved without his direct input, flowing through space like water. Weapons fired when opportunities presented themselves. Shields shifted to cover vulnerable points. David was no longer piloting the vessel. He was the vessel. The battle lasted 3 more minutes. When it ended, 2 pirate ships drifted as wreckage and the third was fleeing at maximum speed. David opened his eyes to find himself shaking, covered in sweat. His head felt like it was splitting open. "That was incredible," Raina said quietly. "You fought like a Draconid with decades of experience. How did you do that?" "I don't know," David gasped. "I just stopped thinking and let the ship take over." "That's exactly what you're supposed to do," Raina said. "But it usually takes years to learn that level of trust. You did it in your first real combat." David wanted to feel proud, but mostly he felt sick. He'd just killed people. They were pirates who would have killed him, but they were still people. Through the ship's sensors, he could see bodies floating in the wreckage, lives he'd ended with a thought. "First time is always hard," Raina said, reading his expression. "But you did what was necessary. They gave you no choice." Over the following days, David thought a lot about that battle, about how easily the ship had killed, about how his instincts had merged with its weapon systems. The bond was making him more than human, but what exactly was he becoming? Ember grew stronger as the ship's systems stabilized. The small dragon could now leave his medical chamber for short periods. He would explore the corridors, testing his wings and breathing small puffs of flame, and he was always aware of David. "He knows you saved him," Raina said one day. "Children are more perceptive than adults think. He senses that the ship is healthier because of you." David watched Ember play, and felt the child's joy through the ship's connection. It was pure and innocent, untainted by understanding of genocide or politics. Ember just knew that he was alive. His ship was strong, and strange warmth came from the human who moved through the corridors. He is unaware of your existence as his savior, Reyna continued. He just knows the ship loves you. And to a Draconidae child, the ship is everything. 2 weeks into their journey, Reyna finally revealed more about their destination. The hidden colony existed in a system with a dying red star. 7 Draconidae families had survived the plague by retreating there before the infection spread. They'd lived in isolation for 50 years, slowly fading as their ships aged and no new vessels could be grown. They're not going to welcome a human, Reyna warned. Many of them lost children to the plague. They know humanity stole our technology and did nothing to help us. Your presence will anger them. Then why are we going? David asked. Because you might be the key to saving my species, Reyna said. If your hybrid bond can work, if other humans could learn to bond with our ships, it might give us a way forward. My people won't like it, but survival matters more than pride. David thought about that, a future where humans and Draconidae were connected through living ships. It seemed impossible, but so had everything else that happened to him in the past 2 weeks. On the 19th day of their journey, the ship's long-range sensors detected something that made David's blood run cold. A massive fleet was moving through the sector, scanning every system methodically. The enforcement wasn't just looking for them. They were conducting a systematic search of empty space. They're not going to stop until they find us, Reyna said grimly. And if they do, they'll find the colony. We need to warn your people, David said. We will, Reyna replied. But first we need to survive the next 3 days, because that fleet is between us and home and there's no way around them. They slipped past the enforcement fleet using a maneuver that should have been impossible. David pushed the ship into the gravity well of a gas giant, skimming so close to the atmosphere that the hull temperature spiked dangerously high. The fleet's sensors couldn't distinguish them from the planet's turbulent storms. It was reckless and desperate, but it worked. 23 days after leaving Waypoint Station, they finally reached the hidden colony. The system appeared dead at first glance. The red dwarf star burned weakly, casting everything in dim crimson light. Planets were barren rock, stripped of atmosphere long ago, but as they moved deeper into the system, David's sensors picked up signs of life among the asteroid belt. There, Reyna said, pointing to a cluster of large asteroids. The colony. As they approached, David saw them, 7 massive ships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built, nestled in hollowed-out asteroids. They were magnificent and heartbreaking at the same time. The vessels glowed with faint light, their crystalline structures dimmed by age. These were the last survivors of an entire civilization. They're beautiful, David whispered. They're dying, Reyna said sadly. Like my people. The colony's response was immediate and hostile. Weapon systems activated, tracking their approach. David felt his ship's defensive instincts rising, ready to protect itself. He pushed those feelings down, keeping the vessel calm. Reyna of the Broken Sky, a voice transmitted on old Draconidae frequencies. You return after 50 years with a corrupted vessel. The stench of human contamination precedes you. Explain yourself before we destroy you. Elder Theron, Reyna replied. I bring hope, not contamination. The human with me has bonded with my son's ship. He saved Ember's life. I ask permission to land and explain. Silence stretched for long minutes. David could feel the other ship's awareness touching his vessel, sensing the wrongness of his presence. To them, he was a disease, an infection in their sacred technology. You bring a human to our sanctuary? Theron's voice dripped with fury. Have you gone mad? They destroyed us. They stole our technology and left us to die. Now you bond one of them to a Draconidae vessel? I bonded to save my son, Reyna said firmly. And it worked. Ember lives because of this human. I will not apologize for that. Another long silence. Then reluctantly, you may land. But the human will be confined and examined. If this is a trick, if he carries any human technology that could betray our location, we will execute you both. The ship descended toward the largest asteroid. As they passed through a disguised entrance, David saw the colony's true nature. The asteroid had been hollowed out into a massive habitat. Gardens grew under artificial sunlight. Water flowed in streams along carefully carved channels. Buildings of living crystal housed the survivors, but there were so few of them. David counted perhaps 200 Draconidae moving through the colony. Some were elderly, their scales dulled with age. Others were middle-aged, bearing scars from battles long past. And there were children, but not many. Less than 30. A species on the edge of extinction. They landed in a central plaza. The moment the airlock opened, armed Draconidae surrounded them. They wore armor of the same biocrystalline material as the ships. Weapons integrated into their bodies. David felt his ship's fear and forced it to remain calm. Reyna emerged first, Ember cradled in her arms. The small dragon looked around with wide eyes, sensing his people for the first time. The guards' expression softened slightly at the sight of a child, but their weapons remained pointed at the ship. "Come out, human," commanded a tall Draconidae with dark red scales. "Face judgment." David took a deep breath and stepped through the airlock. The moment his feet touched the ground, pain exploded in his skull. The colony's ships were all reaching out to him simultaneously, sensing the bond, trying to understand what he was. It was like being examined by 7 giant minds at once. He fell to his knees, crying out. Through the pain, he felt his ship trying to protect him, pushing back against the other vessels. But it was young and weak compared to these ancient giants. "Stop," Reyna commanded. "You're hurting him." "He's not a threat. He's an abomination," said the tall Draconidae. "A human bonded to one of our ships. This is sacrilege. This is survival," Reyna countered. "Look at us, Theron. We're dying. Fewer than 200 remain. How many children have been born in the last 10 years? 5, 6. And how many survived to adulthood? 2. We're going extinct, and you know it." Theron's expression was hard, but David saw pain in his eyes. Better to die pure than to live corrupted by human influence. "That's not your choice to make," said a new voice. An elderly Draconidae approached, her scales pale with age. "I am Lyris, keeper of biolore. I wish to examine this human and his bond." Theron stepped aside reluctantly. Lyris knelt beside David, her ancient eyes studying him with scientific curiosity. She placed a clawed hand on his forehead, and suddenly the pain from the other ship's examination faded. "Fascinating," Lyris murmured. "His neural structure has been completely reorganized. The bond isn't grafted onto his human biology. It's become part of it. He's not pretending to be Draconidae. He's become something new." "What does that mean?" Theron demanded. "It means Reyna might have discovered something important," Lyris said. She helped David to his feet. "Come, human. Let me examine you properly. The rest of you, stop threatening him. If I'm right about this, he might be more valuable than you realize." Lyris led David to a medical facility carved into the asteroid's walls. The chamber was filled with bioscanners and equipment David didn't recognize. She had him lie on a platform that molded itself to his body and began running tests. "Your DNA has been altered extensively," Lyris said, studying holographic displays. "Exposure to our technology over many years changed you at a cellular level. But the bond accelerated those changes exponentially. You're approximately 60% human now, 40% something else." "Am I still human?" David asked quietly. "That depends on your definition," Lyris said. "You think like a human. You have human emotions and memories. But your body is changing into something that can coexist with Draconidae technology. In another few months, the transformation will be complete. You'll be neither human nor Draconidae, but a hybrid." David absorbed this information. He'd known the bond changed him, but hearing it stated so clinically made it real. He could never go back to being fully human. That life was over. "There's more," Lyris continued. "Your hybrid bond is immune to the plague that destroyed our species. The genetic virus targeted pure Draconidae biology. Your human DNA creates interference patterns that prevent the virus from activating." "What does that mean?" David asked. "It means you might be able to bond with plague-infected ships," Lyris said excitedly. "Ships we thought were dead forever. If other humans could learn to create hybrid bonds like yours, we could potentially restore dozens of vessels." The implications hit David like a hammer. He wasn't just Ember's savior. He might be the key to saving the entire Draconidae species. But when Lyris presented her findings to the council, the reaction was mixed. Half the elders saw hope, the other half saw corruption. "You're suggesting we breed humans to bond with our ships?" Theron said with disgust. "That we pollute our sacred tradition with the species that destroyed us?" "I'm suggesting we survive," Lyris countered. "Is your pride worth more than the lives of our children?" The argument raged for hours. David sat in a holding chamber listening to the debate through his ship's connection. The vessel was confused by the strong emotions flowing through the colony. It wanted to help but didn't understand how. Ember visited him during the debate. The small dragon squeezed through a gap in the doorway and approached David cautiously. Up close, David could see intelligence in those golden eyes. Ember chirped softly, a questioning sound. "Hey there," David said gently. He held out his hand. Ember sniffed it, then climbed into David's lap. The dragon was warm and smelled like ozone. Through the ship's bond, David felt Ember's acceptance. The child didn't care about politics or species. He just knew David was connected to his ship, and that made David family. "He likes you," Raina said from the doorway. "He knows you saved him." "A child's instincts are pure. What's going to happen?" David asked. "The council is split," Raina admitted. "Theron wants you executed as an example. Lyris wants you studied and protected. The others are somewhere in between. And you?" "I want my son to grow up in a world where his species has a future," Raina said. "If that means accepting help from humans, so be it. Pride is worthless if we're all dead." The debate continued into the night. Finally, a compromise was reached. David would remain in the colony, but under supervision. Lyris would continue studying his hybrid bond. If she could determine how to safely replicate it, the council would reconsider allowing other humans to attempt bonding. But they would not actively seek human help. The Draconidae would survive on their own terms or not at all. David accepted these conditions. He had nowhere else to go anyway. Over the following weeks, he learned about Draconidae culture, their history of exploration and discovery, their philosophy of symbiosis between pilot and vessel, their grief over the loss of their civilization. He also learned the full truth about the plague. It hadn't been a natural disease. It had been engineered by humans as a biological weapon, released when the Draconidae refused to share their bonding technology freely. Genocide disguised as research accident. "Did all humans know?" David asked Lyris one day. "No," she admitted. "It was a black operation by your military. Most humans probably still don't know the truth. But ignorance doesn't erase responsibility. Your species benefits from technology built on our corpses." David had no answer to that. He carried guilt for crimes committed before he was born by people he'd never met. But the consequences of those crimes surrounded him every day. Then the alarm sounded. The enforcement fleet had found them. Through his ship's senses, David detected hundreds of vessels entering the system. The colony erupted into chaos. After 50 years of hiding, they'd been discovered. And it was David's fault. Somehow the enforcement had tracked his ship's unique signature. "They followed us here," Raina said, her voice hollow. "We led them right to the colony." Theron confronted David in the plaza, fury in his eyes. "This is your doing, human. You've killed us all." "I didn't mean to," David protested. "Intent doesn't matter," Theron snarled. "The result is the same. The enforcement will destroy this colony to hide their crimes, and you gave them the location." The colony's ships powered up, ready for a final battle. But David knew they couldn't win. 7 ancient vessels against a modern fleet. It would be a massacre, unless he did something impossible. David ran to the plaza where the 7 ancient ships rested. The Draconidae elders were boarding their vessels, preparing for battle. Their faces showed grim determination. They knew they would die today, but they would die fighting. "Wait," David shouted. "I have an idea." "We don't have time for human ideas," Theron said coldly. He was climbing into his ship, a massive vessel with dark blue crystalline structures. "You've done enough damage. Listen to me," David pleaded. "My bond is different from yours. I can feel multiple ships at once. When the pirate vessels attacked, I tracked them simultaneously without conscious thought. What if I could do that with all 7 colony ships?" Lyris, boarding her own vessel, stopped and turned. "What are you suggesting?" "Let me coordinate you," David said. "I'll connect to all 7 ships through my hybrid bond. I'll process tactical information and relay it instantly. You'll fly as one organism instead of 7 separate vessels." "That's impossible," Theron said. "No Draconidi has ever bonded with more than one ship. The neural load would kill you instantly." "But I'm not fully Draconidi," David countered. "My human brain processes information differently. I can multitask in ways your species can't. Let me try." The elders looked at each other. The enforcement fleet was already entering the asteroid belt, weapons charging. They had minutes at most. "If we refuse and fight separately, we die," Lyris said. If we let him try and it fails, we die. Either way, we're dead. We might as well give his plan a chance. Theron's jaw clenched. I hate this. I hate trusting a human. But you're right. We have nothing to lose. He turned to David. If you can do this, prove it. Connect to my ship right now. David reached out with his bond, extending his awareness beyond his own vessel. He found Theron's ship easily. It was ancient and powerful, wary of his presence. David approached carefully, not trying to take control, just asking for connection. The ship resisted at first, then cautiously accepted. Pain spiked through David's skull as the second connection formed. It felt like his brain was being stretched too thin. But his human neural plasticity adapted, creating new pathways to handle the extra input. Within seconds, the pain faded to a manageable ache. I'm in, David gasped. I can feel your ship. Its weapons, its shields, its engines. I know exactly what it's capable of. Theron's eyes widened. That shouldn't be possible. Let him connect to us all, Lyra said. Quickly, before the fleet arrives, one by one, David reached out to the colony ships. Each connection was agony, each new bond threatening to overload his brain. But human adaptability kept saving him. His mind kept finding ways to handle impossible amounts of information. By the time he connected to the seventh ship, David could perceive the entire colony as a single entity. He could feel each ship's capabilities, each pilot's emotions, each weapon's readiness. The amount of information would have destroyed a Draconid mind. But David's human brain treated it like a complex engineering problem, organizing the chaos into manageable systems. Launch, David commanded. All ships launch now. The 7 ancient vessels lifted from their berths simultaneously, moving with unprecedented coordination. Through David's coordination, they formed a defensive sphere around the colony habitat. Each ship covered another's weak points. Each pilot knew exactly where the others were without having to look. The enforcement fleet emerged from behind an asteroid, dozens of modern warships against 7 ancient relics. Their commander, Admiral Cross, broadcast a message. Draconidae vessels, you are ordered to surrender. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. This is your only warning. Tell them we're not surrendering, Theron said through the connection David had created. David relayed the message. The response was immediate. The enforcement fleet opened fire with everything they had. Weapons fire filled space with deadly light. But David was ready. He didn't try to control each ship individually. Instead, he fed them tactical information instantaneously. Ship 3, enemy targeting your port side, shift shields there. Ship 5, opening on your starboard, fire now. Ship 1, enemy missile launch, evade pattern delta. The colony ships moved like dancers, each one reacting to threats the moment they appeared. David's human processing speed, combined with Draconide intuition, created something unprecedented. The ancient vessels twisted and turned, fired and evaded, with precision no individual pilot could match. An enforcement cruiser exploded as 3 colony ships focused fire on its weak points simultaneously. Another took critical damage and began venting atmosphere. The fleet's confidence wavered. Impossible, Admiral Cross transmitted. Those ships should be barely functional. How are they moving like that? David could feel the strain now. Coordinating 7 ships was burning through his energy reserves. His nose started bleeding. His vision blurred. But he couldn't stop. If he lost concentration for even a second, the coordination would collapse. David, your vitals are critical, Reyna warned. She was in the habitat with Ember, watching the battle through monitors. You need to stop before you kill yourself. If I stop, we all die, David replied. His voice was raw with pain. The enforcement fleet changed tactics. They stopped trying to destroy the colony ships and instead targeted the habitat. If they couldn't win the space battle, they'd destroy what the ships were protecting. David saw the planet killer weapons charging and felt ice in his veins. The colony ship's weapons couldn't destroy those missiles in time. The habitat's shields wouldn't hold. 200 Draconidae, including Ember, were about to die. No, David said. He made a decision that would either save everyone or kill him. He pulled power from all 7 ships simultaneously, channeling it through his hybrid bond. The strain was incredible. It felt like his brain was on fire, his nervous system burning from the inside out. But he held the connection, forcing the combined energy into a single point. A massive energy shield materialized around the habitat, far stronger than anything one ship could produce. The planet killer weapons struck it and detonated harmlessly. The habitat survived, but David paid the price. His body convulsed. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The neural connections were burning out, killing him cell by cell. Through fading consciousness, he heard Reyna screaming his name. Then he felt something else, a small presence in his mind reaching out through the ship's bond. Ember. The baby dragon, sensing David's distress, was trying to help. The child's undeveloped bond reached out instinctively, adding his own life force to David's failing systems. The gesture was pure and innocent. Ember didn't understand death or sacrifice. He just knew that David was hurt and he wanted to fix it. The child's energy flowed into David, raw and uncontrolled but full of desperate love. The combination did something unexpected. David's dying hybrid bond and Ember's nascent natural bond merged, stabilizing each other. Instead of burning out, the connections transformed into something new. A three-way bond between human, ship, and Draconity child. David's body stopped dying. The pain faded. When he opened his eyes, everything had changed. He could feel Ember's presence in his mind now, not just through the ship, but directly, and Ember could feel him. They were connected in a way that transcended species. What just happened? Lyris asked through the tactical link. I don't know, David admitted, but I'm still here, and the shield is holding. The enforcement fleet had stopped firing, stunned by the shield's power. Then something else happened. Several ships in the fleet broke formation, moving away from the main group. Admiral Cross's voice came through, but this time it sounded different. All units, cease fire immediately. That's an order. Admiral, we have our orders, another voice protested. I don't care, Cross replied. I've been reading the classified files on this mission. We're not fighting insurgents or criminals. We're committing genocide to cover up a war crime. I won't be part of this. You'll be court-martialed, someone warned. Then I'll be court-martialed, Cross said. But I won't murder children. Any ship that wants to leave with me, do it now. The rest of you can continue this massacre without me. Half the enforcement fleet broke away following Cross. The remaining ships hesitated, their coordination shattered by the mutiny. David saw his opportunity. This is your chance to tell the truth, David transmitted to the entire fleet. Record what you've seen here. 7 ancient ships fought your entire fleet to a standstill because they were protecting their children. Is this the enemy your commanders described? Are these the monsters you were sent to destroy? Silence filled the communication channels. Then one by one more ships began breaking formation. Some followed Cross. Others simply stopped firing and backed away. Within minutes, only a handful of loyalist ships remained, and they were badly outnumbered by their former comrades. The battle ended not with more violence, but with exhaustion. The remaining enforcement ships retreated, knowing they couldn't complete their mission now. Too many witnesses had seen the truth. Too many recordings had been made. The cover-up was over. David collapsed in the pilot's chamber of his ship, barely conscious. Through the bond, he felt Ember curled up in the habitat, equally exhausted but alive. Their connection pulsed with mutual affection. The child was unaware that he'd just saved David's life, unaware of the enormous gesture he'd made. Ember just knew that David felt better now, and that made him happy. Reyna rushed to the ship and found David barely breathing. But Lyris was with her, scanning him with medical equipment. He's stable, Lyris said with wonder. The bond completed itself. He's permanently connected to Ember now and to the ship. It's the first true three-way bond I've ever seen. Will he survive? Reyna asked. More than survive, Lyris said. He's changed again. Whatever he was before, he's something new now. Not human, not Draconidi, but a genuine hybrid of both. Over the following days, the galaxy learned the truth. Admiral Cross leaked classified documents proving the genocide. News organizations broadcast footage of the battle, showing ancient ships protecting children from military aggression. Public opinion turned against the enforcement's actions. Human colonies began protesting. Some demanded justice for the Draconidae. Others wanted to help the survivors. A few even volunteered to attempt hybrid bonds, hoping to help preserve the dying species. The Draconidae Council was split on how to respond. Theron wanted to reject all human help, maintaining that accepting it would corrupt their culture beyond recognition. But Lyris and the younger generation saw it differently. They argued that culture means nothing if everyone is dead. Finally, a compromise was reached. Humans who wished to help would be screened carefully. Those with compatible biology and genuine intentions could attempt bonds, but only with full Draconidae consent. The process would be sacred and voluntary, not forced or commercialized. David became the bridge between species. His hybrid bond proved that coexistence was possible. He spent months training other humans who showed compatible genetic markers, teaching them meditation techniques and how to open their minds to alien consciousness. Not everyone succeeded. Some humans couldn't adapt to the bond and had to abandon the attempt, but enough succeeded to make a difference. Within a year, 15 new hybrid bonds formed. 15 Draconides ships were restored. 15 children now had healthy vessels to grow with. Ember grew quickly under David's care. The dragon learned to fly, to breathe fire, to speak in the musical language of his people, but he also learned human words and human concepts. He was growing up between two cultures, comfortable in both. 3 years after the battle, David stood in the colony plaza. Ember sat beside him, now the size of a small horse, his scales gleaming in the red starlight. Reyna approached, no longer hostile but respectful. "He is aware of your existence now," Reyna said, watching her son. "He knows you're not Draconidi. He knows you're the human who saved his life, and he knows you'll be connected to him forever." "How does he feel about that?" David asked. Ember answered for himself, nuzzling David's hand with his scaled snout. The gesture needed no translation. "Love transcended species. The galaxy knows the truth now," Reyna continued. "About what happened to my people, about humanity's role in it, about the path forward. We're not saved yet, but we have a chance. Because of you." David looked at his hands. They looked human, but he knew they weren't, not entirely. He'd been transformed by his choices, by his bond with Ember's ship, by his decision to help when he could have run. He was neither human nor Draconidy anymore, but something new, something that proved two species could build bridges instead of walls. "What happens now?" David asked. "Now we survive," Reyna said simply. "Together, human and Draconide, finding a way forward that honors both our peoples." Ember spread his wings, testing them in preparation for flight. Soon he'd be strong enough for his first real journey among the stars, and David would be with him, connected through the bond, sharing every moment of wonder and discovery. Admiral Cross's message arrived on a secure channel. He'd been court-martialed as promised, but had become a symbol of moral courage. His leaked documents had triggered investigations across human space. Justice was slow, but it was coming. "There are more survivors than we thought," Cross's message said. "Small groups hiding in other systems. Now that the truth is out, they're making contact. Your colony might not be the only one. There's hope, David. Real hope." David shared this news with the council. Even Theron, who'd hated him from the beginning, nodded slowly. Hope was a fragile thing, especially for a species that had lost so much, but it was real. That night, David lay in his quarters with Ember curled beside him. Through their bond, he could feel the dragon's dreams. Flying through nebulae, exploring distant worlds, discovering ancient ruins, a child's dreams full of possibility. And David dreamed too, not of being human again, that door was closed forever, but of a future where the mistakes of the past could be redeemed, where genocide could be answered with cooperation, where two species could share something sacred and create something beautiful from it. He placed his hand on Ember's side, feeling the dragon's heartbeat through the scales. This was his family now, not by blood but by choice, by sacrifice, by the willingness to change everything he was to save an innocent life. Humanity had taken so much from the Draconidae, but through David, through hybrid bonds, through people willing to become something more than human, they might give something back. Not redemption, nothing could truly redeem genocide, but perhaps a path forward, a chance at rebuilding what had been destroyed. Ember stirred in his sleep, and David felt the dragon's contentment through their bond. The child was unaware of the complex politics, the guilt and hope, the weight of history. He just knew he was loved. His ship was healthy, and his strange hybrid parent would always protect him. And really, David thought, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was how you changed the galaxy, not through grand gestures or political movements, but through small acts of love, by choosing to save one life even when it cost everything. The stars shone through the viewport, constant and eternal. Somewhere out there, more survivors were gathering courage to reveal themselves. Somewhere, humans and Draconidi were learning to trust each other. Somewhere, new hybrid bonds were forming, creating bridges between species. David Chen, the mechanic who just wanted to finish his shift, had become something far greater, a symbol of what humanity could be when it chose compassion over conquest, an example of the adaptability that was humanity's greatest strength and greatest curse. He closed his eyes and let sleep take him, Ember's warmth against his side, the ship's consciousness humming in his mind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conflicts, new opportunities for both failure and success. But tonight, in this moment, there was peace, and that was enough.